So this next session is on pioneering a new era of purpose-driven football clubs. It's brought to you in collaboration with Common Goal. Fascinating conversation awaits, I'm sure you'll agree. Here are your speakers. Please welcome them to the stage. Director of the Foundation at Real Sporting de Gijón, Germán Argüelles. Founder and President at Angel City FC, Julie Uhrmann. Purpose Leader at Right to Dream and Commercial Director at FC Nordsjælland, Jacob Neisch. And guiding the conversation with us, Chief Advisor at Common Goal, Ben Miller. Give him a big round of applause, please. Ben, great to see you, my friend. Floor is yours.
Thanks, David. Well, hi everybody. Thanks for sharing your time with us here today. We've got three innovative club leaders here who are going to tell us a little bit of their story about their strategy and how that unique strategy actually drives return on investment. Before we kick off, firstly, my name is Ben Miller, so I'm from Common Goal, and I guess it's important just to point out, for those that don't know about Common Goal, it's a collective movement in global football, which is led by professional players and coaches, and also other leaders from the football industry, including a growing coalition of clubs. And Common Goal started 5 years ago, almost to the day, with a single player, who's Juan Mata, a world champion and European champion with Spain, but also former Valencia, Chelsea, and Manchester United player who recently signed for Galatasaray. And today, that number exceeds, I think it's getting close towards 250 athletes and coaches from professional football, from 50 countries, almost half of which are women, which is something that, as a movement, we're very proud of. And the mission of Common Goal is really to take action to unleash this unique potential that football has to create positive change for people and planet. And our core belief, is that this can only really be done by radical collaboration from all the components of the football industry, many of which are represented here today. So before we get going, I just want a quick shout out to two club members of Common Goal who couldn't be here today. One is from the USL in North America, the Oakland Roots, a unique club. Please check out what they're doing. And also the first club to join from the Bundesliga, Werder Bremen, who quite recently joined Common Goal, pledging 1% of ticketing, 1% of sponsorship revenue, and also have placed an opt-out clause on all of the professional contracts at the club. That's players and non-players. So kudos to them. Wish they could have been here, but for different reasons they can't. So I think you've all been introduced. So I think probably we'll just dive straight into it. And we'll start with you, if that's okay, Julie. You've been on a bit of a tour, so thank you very much for making the time to be with us here at the World Football Summit in Sevilla. I heard about, like most people, I heard about Angel City FC a long time before you had kicked a ball as a club, and then got to know you guys, because with everything, as we were saying before, with this incredible amount of work that you have of launching a new franchise, you still made the time to commit to being one of the leading members of the Common Goal LGBTQ+ platform, Play Proud. And also, you were the leaders of a coalition of clubs in the US to join our racial justice platform, the Anti-Racist Project. So clearly, you stand for something far beyond football. So I just wanted to explain to the audience a little bit about the genesis of the club and what your objectives are on and off the pitch.
Yeah, happy to, and so thrilled to be here and to speaking to all of you about Angel City Football Club. So very briefly, Angel City Football Club is the 12th team in the National Women's Soccer League. We kicked our first ball this year, And if all things go well on Friday, and then again on Sunday, we'll make the playoffs. So that's nerve-wracking. We founded Angel City and built it really differently. In some ways, you could say that we built it with intention to have a bigger mission, to have a bigger objective. Angel City is founded by 3 females, myself, Natalie Portman, the actress and activist, and Kara Nortman, who's a venture capitalist. And Kara and Natalie spent a lot of time with the U.S. Women's National Team Players Association through their time with Time's Up when the U.S. Women's National Team was embarking on their lawsuit against U.S. Soccer for pay equity, which they just got in the CBA that was signed just a couple weeks ago. Natalie and Kara really got to learn about the plight of these athletes and how incredible they are, how hard they work, the fact that they are better than their male counterparts. They draw more viewership, they draw more attention, they certainly get more medals, and yet they weren't paid the same. And started to learn sort of more about the reason behind that, and it sort of was capped off with the ESPYs and Abby Wambach winning the Icon Award at the same time that Kobe Bryant and Peyton Manning won it. So you have these 3 incredible athletes standing on a stage receiving the highest award from the ESPN for being exceptional at what they do. And Peyton and Kobe were talking about life after sports and where they were going to spend their millions and what they were going to do and the opportunities and the advantages that were coming their way. And Abby couldn't figure out how to pay a mortgage. And that disparity really stuck with Natalie. She would go home, and at the time, her young son would wear a Messi jersey one day, a Ronaldo jersey the next, and then a Rapinoe jersey. And so she saw her young son thinking that there's no difference in these athletes, yet in reality it's different. And Natalie's the kind of person that wants to affect change and realized to really affect change, you need to have a seat at the table. So why not launch a women's professional sports team in her city of LA? I'm an entrepreneur, and Natalie and Kara came to me and said, how are we going to figure this out? And when I asked them what was most important, Natalie said from the beginning that mission was going to be core to what we wanted to build. Honestly, I had no idea what that meant, right? You typically do mission and purpose after, right? It's an afterthought. Very few organizations that lead with mission that have a goal of being profitable, right? And so we, from the beginning, knew that we wanted to be bigger than the sport. We wanted to be bigger than the game. It was a really unique moment in time after the 2019 World Cup where the U.S. women won again. And there was a lot going on with Time's Up and supporting women. And so we wanted to build an organization where mission and capital could coexist, where we would lead with passion and purpose to drive to profitability, where we'd never have to sacrifice purpose for profit. And you might ask, why is profit so important to you? And I've never yet talked about soccer. But profit was important to us because we were doing it so differently. We are 3 female founders. We're a majority female ownership group. We were building Angel City as if we were a startup, raising money into our success versus asking for capital calls in our failure, and knowing that the majority of sports teams don't make money. The majority of sports teams, were owned by a single family or a private equity shop. The idea was that if we were going to do differently and lead with purpose, if we didn't make money, then we weren't really changing the conversation. We weren't changing the dialogue. We were like everybody else, so there was no way to say that this is the right way to do it going forward. And so we had to have a lens to how do we do both? And it really was transformative because every single thing we do, we think about how do we set higher expectations on and off the pitch? How do we support our players on and off the pitch? How do we have a positive impact in the community? And how do we use this incredible ownership group of actors and athletes and media executives to leverage their platform to build attention and awareness for Angel City? Because if we can do that, then we can drive the most impact and then ultimately the most revenue. And so, full circle, Angel City's ambition is to be a global brand. If we're a global brand, we can have the most impact, we can draw the most attention, we can drive the most revenue, and then we can give it back. And we do that, and we can talk about it later, but we do it through our sponsorship model, we do it through our ticket sales. Every single activity that we do has some element of positive impact in our community.
That's brilliant. Well, thank you very much. I've got now about 6 different questions I'd like to ask you, but just to move on to you, Jacob. I think I guess I've been around for a while now, and know of all the people that I know in football, I think you're the only person with purpose in their job title, other than Mike Geddes at Oakland Roots, who we both know, of course. Purpose is such a word that's been branded around so much at the moment. I'd be really interested to know, as the purpose lead at Right to Dream and FC Nordland, what you take that word to mean, and how that is integrated in your work at Right to Dream.
Yeah, okay. First of all, I can't take all the credit for me and Mike as having purpose in job titles, because there's 5 people in the purpose team at Right to Dream, so there's actually a few more of us as well.
Okay.
They're just maybe a little bit behind the scenes. So yeah, if we think about how we define purpose, we define it as creating the opportunity for all of our people and our players to discover the best version of themselves and to work with that on an ongoing basis. Now, this is a little bit more abstract. It's a little bit more, let's say, it's a little bit more internal than some of the definitions of purpose that you see elsewhere in the football industry, which tend to be very much about doing good in the world, behaving in a very responsible way, and behaving purposefully, you know, for communities, for audiences, and for themselves, of course. And for us, that was just too externalized. It just didn't resonate with us. And then over the last few years, I think, spurred on by some really great media reporting about us that talked about our reputation for growing purpose-driven athletes, we kind of began to ask ourselves some really difficult questions about how real this stuff really was. And while, yeah, it was true that we were producing players that would find it quite easy and natural to sign up to Common Goal, we also didn't really know how systematic we were being about that. So, supported by our investor group and who are the Mansour family, we launched into a 6-month research project that looked really deep at what we were doing, looked into kind of all the data that's out there about purpose, tried to understand what our people were saying about it, and we learned a hell of a lot. One thing in particular I think that we learn is about how the world understands purpose, which I think might be interesting. And that's, if we take this room and we ask the room the same question that you asked me, we'd find that about 50% of the people will define it as their why, their motivation, their goal, the thing that they're driving for. And then the other 50% of the people, they would define it as the feeling of meaning when they're doing something, like meaningful work or meaningful play, right? And the key kind of takeaway from that is that about 50% of the world, they cannot describe what a single word around purpose means, and yet they know exactly how it feels. So we have to think about that when we're actually designing how we're going to work with purpose internally. And so that's why internal journeys of self-discovery, helping people, creating the opportunities for people to work with the best version of themselves, that's the reason why. And then we designed off the back of this 6-month research project that we did with the support of the Mansour family, with 3 PhDs working on that. You know, we really went deep into the subject. We designed 3 core elements that we're going to build out over the next 5 years. The first is a curriculum playbook that essentially is a kind of development platform for our people so that they can flourish. The second is a lab. It's the Purpose Lab. It's like a place where all the magic happens. And then the third is, we call it at the moment Purpose Entrepreneurships, but what it really is a kind of incubator, accelerator for those people who maybe they've done a few curriculum elements, or maybe they're just ready to do something and they want to develop their own social enterprise. They want to build out their own project, and they're ready to do stuff in the world. And that kind of provides funding to them. It provides 2 years worth of mentoring and support from, you know, brilliant entrepreneurs as well. And we're going to continue to do that work over the next 5 years. We're at the very beginning of this in some ways, even though, you know, we've been accused of doing purpose work for the last 20. In some ways, we see ourselves at like 2 out of 10. It's a very long journey, and there's a lot more that we can do.
Yeah, I mean, in a second, we'll go back to actually the sort of the story about Right to Dream and FC Norton as well, to give context for people that don't know you guys, because at the same time, you're a very successful football club in the traditional definition of the word as well. So we'll get onto that in a second. Germán, to move on to you, so as the director of the foundation at Sporting Gijón, which is part of the Orlegui group, a club that was founded like almost 120 years ago in Spain. It's 1,000 kilometers north of here for people who aren't from Spain. And it's a club which is very famous in Spanish football culture for your fan base, for the culture and traditions of the club. I'm interested to know, firstly, about a little bit about the context of what's happening at the club now with the takeover of the Orlegui group, but also how difficult is it, or what are the challenges that you face to, in the case of Julia, like you said, purpose was at the beginning of the creation of this entity. You're 120 years into the journey of this club, and it's something that you're trying to implement now. So I'd be very interested to hear what your plans are, what the challenges are around that.
Well, obviously, every organization that is going through a lot of changes is going to face a lot of resistance, internal resistance, in the face of transformation. The good news with Orlegui Group is that a guiding principle for this group has been winning by serving. And this concept has actually permeated throughout the organization and is now a fundamental pillar of the institution and part of the culture. So everybody's completely behind the idea of winning by serving. Now we need to obviously work in more deeply in what that means to Sporting Gijón. As you said, this is a very old club, close to 120 years old. Unfortunately, we have a lot of issues that we need to tackle in my home state, in Asturias. Just to give you an example, our population over 64 doubles the population under 15. We got the lowest birth rate in Europe. So I think we don't have any other option than being sustainable with the being social impact oriented, having our purpose as close as possible to our DNA. As I said, winning by serving is helping us basically jump on the wagon and develop our own strategy as Sporting Gijón. We have some flexibility. We need obviously to localize what has been done overseas in Mexico so far. Grupo Orlegui owns 2 more clubs. One is Atlas and the other one is Santos Laguna. Apparently, the ambition is to buy more clubs, make it part of a multi-property, including the US as well as the UK. I'm actually quite excited about this opportunity because I get the opportunity to go back home 36 years later with all the issues that we're facing. I've been part of the Football for Good space for almost 20 years. And we're going to need a lot of support, no question about that. No matter that we have a winning by serving mentality, but this involves everybody. We were speaking this morning about radical collaboration. We need public-private partnerships. We cannot basically come and replace the government from the work that they should be doing. And we're definitely open to anybody here in the audience that wants to come and support our winning by serving mentality.
Brilliant. Now, Julie, we were speaking earlier that I think you first came on my radar from your work in Silicon Valley. So you're a businesswoman, you're an entrepreneur. There's a dominant perception, which I believe exists. I don't know if anyone else agrees with me. I'm often the cynic in the Common Goal gang, but the incumbent forces in football seem to think that profit and purpose are sort of 2 opposing concepts. So I'd be really interested to hear the business case to dismiss this old school perception.
There's 2 ways of looking at it. One is commercialization, right? So when we talk about not sacrificing purpose for profit, we think about how can we have impact when we're driving revenue, because it's actually a way to engage the fan base. It's a way to gauge the community. We had a little over 2.5 years to build Angel City. So we had the opportunity to talk to our community to see what was important to them, what organizations they cared about, how could we have a positive impact. Young girls stopped playing sports at the age of 13. The number 1 reason they stop playing sports is because they can't afford a sports bra. Fairly devastating of a concept, right? Something so simple. So we hear that and we think to ourselves, well, how do we affect that change? How do we make that difference? We know our community cares about that. And so when we started selling seat deposits, before we started selling tickets, we decided that for every seat deposit we sold, and therefore every ticket, we would donate a sports bra to a young girl in need. So our first mission was to go find 22,000 sports bras, because we knew that it would be another reason for someone to want to support Angel City, another reason to want to come to a match, right? Because they knew that that ticket now meant that a young girl could keep playing sports, right? And we sold, we have nearly 16,000 season ticket holders. We donated over 22,000 sports bras. We've had 4 sellout crowds. So we went to Nike and we said, we have this great idea. Nike's not a partners of ours yet. They're a partner of the league, but they're not a team partner. And we went to Nike and said, we want to give a sports bra to to 22,000 girls because we know we're going to sell this place out. And without being a partner, but having shared values and being mission aligned to want to support women's sports, to want to grow the sport, to want to get more young girls in sports, they said yes on the spot. The second part is, I don't think we have 22,000 bras in our warehouses. And they said, let me get back to you. And they came back and they said, we have 5,000. And I said, that's great, we need 22,000. They're like, okay, we'll come back. They came back the next day, like, hey, we found 10,000 throughout all of the US. We're like, well, that's great, but we need 22,000. And by the time we kicked our first ball, we had donated 22,000 bras. And so, I think that's a great example of where, we were able to drive our revenue goal, but we were also able to have a positive impact. And we've carried that through with everything. Before we had a sports club, before we had a sponsor, we wanted to show up in the community, and we didn't know what that meant. And we partnered with the LA 84 Foundation and their Play Equity Fund. We did a listening tour with them. We met over a dozen organizations to understand what was important to them. And as we were trying to build the brand of Angel City, trying to show and live our values and to build our community, we would do equipment drives and food distribution drives, and we work on the last mile of distributing food, all during COVID, because that's also when sort of Angel City was built. But it helped us establish a relationship and a connection with our community and know how we could support them, because the stronger our ties with the community, the more they're going to support Angel City, and we want them to support Angel City by buying our merch, buying tickets, coming to the games, evangelizing us to their friends to bring more people in. Then the next phase was with the partners, and when we brought in brands and sponsors, we said the same thing, that we lead with purpose. Like, it's great that you're going to get LEDs and you're going to have ads on radio and television, but really it's the work we're going to do together in our community. And so we developed the Angel City sponsorship model, where 10% of our sponsorship dollars go back into the community. This year alone, we'll have put back to work a little over $1 million into the community, and we have built an extensive community team and content team so we can talk about what we're doing and show what we're doing and bring our community and our fans in to help do service events with us, including our ownership group. The net result of that is we have north of 43 million in committed sponsorship revenue. We have the highest valued kit of anybody in women's sports. And we're actually driving greater value because we have shared values with our partners. Our consumers understand why we're partnering with them. It makes them have a greater emotional connection with our partners. And as we're doing this on the global scale and using our platform to tell our stories, not only through Angel City and our players, but also through our ownership group, I absolutely believe that we can, through our brand, shift culture and build something that's inclusive for all and be responsive to the moments that we live in. Sport is a really unique way to achieve our ultimate goal, which is equity, right? We know that's going to take a long time. You can talk about pay equity in sports, but true equity for women, they say, is going to take 100 years. We think that using sports, we can bend that curve. We can shift culture, certainly through Angel City. Sports moves faster. It's appointment-based. It allows you an opportunity to monetize, and we feel that we have enough proof points with Angel City that we can sort of take that even further with the brand of Angel City.
Yeah, I mean, I've done lots of work in my over the years with very well-known sort of celebrities, and often the most common thing I've seen is an overestimation of the value, the direct value that association can create, unless there's something meaningful and well thought out behind it. So in your case, obviously, you've got this ownership group with some very high-profile names, but it's actually more the purpose as the differential that has moved the business part of it?
Like, this is a foreign concept. When we went to raise money, we got over 100 no's. People didn't understand how you could do both mission and capital. They thought you were a nonprofit, or they wanted you to be a football team. So when we went to traditional funding sources, they said no. And then we sort of flipped the business model and said, instead of trying to find one person that wanted to fund 80 to 90% of it, that didn't have the sort of passion and commitment and the ultimate goal to drive to equity that we had, we're going to build Angel City like it's a startup. And we're going to find investors and owners who understand what it is we're doing, who understand how to use their platform, not only to push their brand forward, but also their social purpose and how they want to show up in the world. We were fortunate and got introduced early to Alexis Ohanian, who's married to Serena Williams and the founder of Reddit and 776 Ventures. He's actually talking later today. But he understood our goal to drive to equity, but he also understood that this sport of global football, specifically women's football, had no ceiling. You have the most incredible athletes in the world, brand names with Megan Rapinoe and Alex Morgan and Kristen Press, and a sport where the women are truly the best in the world, and the best in the world play in the US, and they play in the National Women's Soccer League. So there was an opportunity to build the business of women's football and to give back at the same time. So he came on board as our controlling owner. And then it sort of shifted our focus with who we went to raise capital from. So, Natalie introduced us to her friends, and Eva Longoria and Jessica Chastain, Jennifer Gardner, Iza Duba, Sophia Bush, Lily Singh, America Ferrara, Billie Jean King, Lindsey Vonn, all understood how to use your platform to build attention awareness for what you're doing, whether it's your movie or your personal project or the social good program that you care about. And then we went to athletes, and Julie Foudy, who's a former U.S. Women's National Team player and a gold medalist, came on board. We brought in Abby Wambach and Mia Hamm, and then we have a total of 14 former U.S. Women's National Team players who wanted to have an impact in the sport, but was always doing it from the sidelines. So not only do they have a voice in our boardroom, but now they have a financial stake in the business. And the value that we've received from that inspired us to launch the Player 22 Fund, which is a partnership with the California Community Fund where former female footballers can apply to the fund and get grants to stay in the sport. So they could become coaches or general managers or get their broadcasting degree, or they can get their coaching license. But we wanted to be able to find a way to, again, benefit from those people whose shoulders we're standing on to build Angel City Football Club. This is our first year, as I said. We don't have any former Angel City players, so it's not about Angel City. It's about, again, paying it forward and trying to do something, to grow the sport. And so we do that with our sponsors. We do it with former players. We do it with our fans. We launched these are all really long names. We launched the fan-fueled Angel City 1% program, where 1% of our net gate receipts go back to our players in exchange for them using their name, image, and likeness to drive ticket sales. But the idea, again, is that we want to affect everybody, in the ecosystem of driving the engine, which is generating revenue, which then, again, allows us to give back to the community, right? So they really do work hand in hand. And what we've seen is we have 6 supporter groups. We've sold out 4 games of 22,000 seats. Our average ticket attendance is 19,000 fans. We have nearly 16,000 season ticket holders with a nearly 90% renewal rate for 2023. Like, the business is working, and the business is allowing us to have impact, and the impact is the result of our relationship with our community and what they care about and how we can make a difference in the community that we live in, which is Los Angeles.
That's great, thanks. And yeah, no wonder you were so receptive to common goal, to coalition building, to collaboration, because it's based on that very idea.
We partnered with Common Goal, again, before we even had a club, before we had a player. We started with the Anti-Racist Project, and then we partnered on Play Proud and developed Play Proud United with 7 other US-based clubs, where we can work and understand how do we build an inclusive, diverse, safe environment for our fans so that it is a enjoyable experience to come to an Angel City football match. And we believe we have one of the most diverse, inclusive fan bases. We hear from our fans that it's safe, and do it in such an intentional way so that we're supporting the community that wants to support Angel City, but also create an experience that really should be fun and enjoyable for everyone.
So from this very progressive LA community to Denmark.
What are you saying about Denmark?
I'm not saying anything about Denmark. Just an interesting comparison in terms of the openness to innovation, perhaps. I don't know. I'm not an expert. You'd live there. So I guess it's the same question, Jacob, but from a different perspective, because my numbers aren't my strong point, but I think 2015 was when Tom Vernon bought FC Nordsjælland, so it's like a reverse thing. So it's an academy in Africa buying a first division club, and it's like, and you've subsequently sort of tipped everything on its head as you've gone along, which is why you're being so successful. But what were the challenges, I guess, in transforming a club that was already established in the Danish context, and what would you pick out? Again, I'm really quite obsessed with coming up with proof points to show that this isn't just some kind of PR fluff or marketing when we talk about purpose-driven strategy. It's business strategy. So I'm wondering what proof points you'd highlight. And it doesn't necessarily need to be economic, but also in terms of performance, in terms of well-being, in terms of engagement with fans, and all these other metrics that clubs traditionally look at.
Sure. So the first thing to say is when Right to Dream acquired FC Nordsjælland, I think part of the reason why was because there was a really good fit there. And we had been doing kind of like really good human, holistic-based athletic development for some time in the academy that we were running in Ghana, and been fortunate enough to produce some players from that. But FC Nordsjælland had also been doing a lot of that work over the years, and had a really great academy. And so the kind of blend was really good. And of course there are challenges in the kind of like bringing together of two different performance cultures, right? And now we have three with the academy that we're building in Egypt. But these things overwhelmingly are positive in terms of the diversity and plurality of thought that they bring. So they're really good in that way. But to answer your question very specifically, because what I think you're asking about is like the ROP, is the return on purpose, right? And I think what's brilliant about Julie's answer is it's about football as a public good. Like the whole game benefits from what you're doing, which is really great. And that's the kind of change that we hope to affect one day as well. But there are questions that come from head coaches, sporting directors, chief financial officers within the club ecosystems themselves that you can answer. And just reminding that, like, because we're focusing very much on the environment in which our people, our staff, but also our players and our coaches, that the environment that they flourish in, that's like where our competitive advantage is. Like, how does that competitive advantage see a return? And if you look over the last few years, from the way in which our academy model works and how much we've invested in it, and how intentionally we're working in that, what we see is that on the men's side, we get an average of 9 points more than a comparable club of our size would get in any given season. We generate about 14 times more financial value than a club of our comparable turnover would usually generate. And we've become, our academy model on the men's side is the 13th most productive in the world.
I have to write this down.
Yeah, when it comes to the top 31 leagues in Europe, we're fortunate enough that on a recent Champions League night, our academy graduates are scoring, 3 of our academy guys. Oh, nobody liked that one, so maybe there's a Liverpool fan in the room that turned up. But yeah, 3 of our academy graduates are scoring at different times on one Champions League night. So that's really, really exciting, and the bar's being raised. And then on the women's side, from starting from very little 4 years ago in Denmark, we already had an academy function out in Ghana where we were working with young women for a long time. But from 4 years ago in Denmark to kind of almost creeping into the Champions League just 2 years ago, and now producing national team players, and also having the first elite girls' academy in Denmark. These are all like very demonstrable financial and playing outcomes, right, that can really hit the bottom line for a club. So the key thing is are you patient enough to do it? Because for a club to do this and to see it in this way, it's a very, very long-term investment. If you start working intentionally with players at 11 years old, it's going to be a minimum of 7 years before that player signs their first professional contract. And I think that's the key thing, the key question, I think, that football needs to ask itself is, are they willing to play longer-term games than they're currently playing?
And perhaps the idea of redefining success to some extent, that in quite a broken, because the genesis of Right to Dream is that Tom was a talent scout for Alec Ferguson.
That's right.
So he'd seen how this system, and everybody knows it, but we don't really recognize it, but it sort of chews and spits out 99.9% of young athletes.
If I can respond directly to that, because I mean, the kind of wastage of human potential that we see, for example, in the English academy system, where less than 1% of players will play a single game of professional football. Tom kind of had a converse hypothesis 20 years ago, and he thought that if he worked with the 16 best players that he found in his local area, and instead of focusing entirely on their athletic, technical, tactical dreams to be a football player, instead he would try to grow them as whole human beings, you know, with focusing very much on their character, focusing very much on their education, that essentially he didn't just think that was the right thing to do, he also thought there was a business case. He thought that we would produce more football players, and that turns out to be the case. And the young men from that first generation that didn't go and play immediately in professional football, they ended up going to top schools in the US on soccer scholarships and becoming accountants and lawyers and changing their lives in different ways, right? So there is a return from working in this way. You be patient enough to do it.
Yeah, I mean, currently, I think there's 26 graduates from the academy who are on full scholarships at American universities.
That's right now, but
and
I think there's more than
if you tell me
7.
that is not success, then like, what is? That's an
it's
extraordinary
really great,
achievement
and a whole bunch that, you know, are working for us now and doing various different roles. It's great.
And they reintegrate that mindset into the system, into the football system, or into a business, or through
That's the hope,
other
but I also don't want to oversell this as well, because we really passionately believe that we're at 2 out of 10. Like the potential for this type of work is absolutely huge if we can go deep enough, if we can constantly peel back those layers of the onion, constantly kind of try to create these new places for our people and our players to flourish. That, we believe, is the secret recipe. That's the secret sauce.
And openness to collaboration is going to be part of the fuel to enable that journey. So Germán, I mean, I also think a lot about sustainability leadership in ESG, and I think there are a lot of similarities in this in terms of that there's a decision to be made about trade-offs, and there's some very hard decisions about trade-offs. Firstly, an identification of materiality as well, but when it comes to deciding if you are genuinely going to invest in this, then it's something that needs to have full support from the organization from the very top, but also all your other stakeholders. What are the trade-offs or the difficulties, the challenges that you have? As you say, the clubs come from a difficult financial situation, and there must be people saying that this is not a priority. So just talk us through your journey at the moment.
So first of all, the group sees social impact and environmental work as an investment. It's not a cost to the group, and we are very committed in creating shared value. And when it comes to Sporting Gijón, as you said, it comes from a very successful story, particularly in the 80s, but a very difficult one, especially in the last 3 decades, when it comes to the financial situation and the social issues that we're facing in my home state. So it's really exciting that the Group Orlegui, as I said before, has purchased the club, and it comes with this winning by serving approach that I mentioned before. It's proven that the model is very successful already in Mexico. The 2 clubs that were bought in Mexico by Group Orlegui, Atlas and Santos Laguna, they both won the championships and the titles, Atlas after 70 years. Just to give you also an example of the work that is done by the clubs over there, all of the players, both academy and first team players, are required to do volunteer work. And it's not just over Christmas, it's something that is done regularly on a weekly basis. And it actually affects and permeates, as I said before, throughout the organization. That doesn't mean, obviously, that the model is perfect. It needs to grow, and especially for us in Sporting Gijón, which is going to be fairly new. It's not like the foundation has never done anything in the past. I'll mention a few examples later. But the risks really are not to do anything. I mentioned before about an aging population, and we actually have double the amount of dogs in our home state. Not double the dogs, sorry, more dogs in my home state in Asturias than we got children. That's how sad it is these days. We have the highest suicidal rate in Spain. and it's particularly with people that are over 65, 70 years old, that they stay back in the rural areas. We got 700 abandoned villages. And at the same time, as you say, we got one of the most passionate and committed fan base that there is in Spain and in Europe. According to La Liga statistics, in these first games of the season, we are the 7th club, including first and second division, the 42 clubs, the 7th club with the most number of spectators going to the games. So imagine we have this platform, this crowd, this opportunity to really transform our home state, and I don't think we have a lot of time, honestly, to turn things around. So once again, it's a great opportunity that Orlegui has purchased Sporting Gijón, and I'm really looking forward for the journey.
Yeah, I'm speaking to a Spanish friend who, for many years, was a football journalist, and I can't swear, I guess, here, so I'm struggling to translate the way that he said it, but fans don't care about anything other than results, basically was his summary of this in a Spanish context. I think clearly you've disproved that. I guess there's two things. One, fan expectations are focused. I love football. I'm a football fan even now after sort of 30 years working in the football industry. Match-going fans are concerned about the players that you sign, the results that you get. So I often hear that as an argument against this way of thinking. And also from a strategic perspective from a club, and I don't know, so I'll ask the three of you, like when things start going wrong on the field, does that mean that the importance of this dissipates and a refocus on performance, on old school way of thinking reemerges? Go on.
Well, we're in our first year, so I don't know if I can answer that question. But I mean, I would say that, from the beginning, we wanted to build something where, the score on the pitch was only one factor of why you were a fan, and why you supported Angel City. We also wanted to build a relationship where you have a relationship with Angel City 365 days a year, not for the 14 home games that we have. And you do that through impact, you do that through community engagement, you do that by having a bigger mission and a bigger goal. And if you make them feel part of it, they're going to want to support the club, they're going to want to support the players, they're going to care when they win, but when we haven't won, we hear all the time, what an incredible experience, next time we'll get them. And I think that's really special. I think that's hard to do.
Do you have a...
I mean, massively motivated by results, right? And goals and transfers and some of the things you were just talking about. That's still a factor. I think the question is like, how much can you make the things non-mutually exclusive, right, for people? Like how you can storytell to people to involve them in the whole journey.
Keep going, don't worry.
The whole journey of the club and of the players, and I think that is something the fans still do care about, and they still want to feel regardless of results. So, and that's a very purposeful endeavour.
And do you, Germán, in the context of Sporting Gijón, do you hear your fans? Does that ring a bell with you? Because it was a Spanish guy that said this to me, from Valencia in his case.
It's a little bit more like that compared to, I guess, Denmark and the US. It does create, obviously, a lot of tension, but I think when you genuinely and authentically you care about the fans, they see beyond what is happening on the pitch, and they continue supporting your goals and your mission. We still have a lot to learn, though, in general, not just Sporting Gijón, but I think in La Liga, versus when you see a game in 4th division in the UK, fans keep going regardless of the scores. But I think it also attracts the talent on the pitch, off the pitch, to work towards the club. And as I said, when you see the success story of Atlas and Santos, I think the winning by serving mentality, I think, is paying off.
Okay. And how are we for time?
Literally out of time.
Oh, we're out of time, are we?
Yeah, we are.
Okay, well...
I'm sorry, Ben. I've just had to stick to time.
I had my stopwatch on, but I guess we started a bit late. The last thing to mention, because I don't want to finish this without just briefly mentioning DAZN, who are also here at the World Football Summit. who became like an impact sponsor of Common Goals in a way in which we sort of met and shared such a strong principle around gender equity, around female empowerment, around football as a platform, that it just made perfect sense as a partnership. And for us, it's been hugely transformational. And there are similar partnerships based on other social themes, so the pillars around gender equity, racial justice, LGBTQ plus inclusion, climate action, construction of peace, for example, and now mental health and well-being being another one. Let's end this by I think purpose is a differential. Does that help identify sponsors on the one hand, corporate partners, and secondly, should football be a little bit more choosy at the moment it comes to partnering with organizations? So I'd just like a quick final reflection.
15 seconds each, go.
Well, that's a very controversial one to finish it off with, especially on the choosing. I think it's a really tough landscape out there at the moment, and of course we're going into some sort of mini crisis here, there, left.
Mini,
yeah, big crisis.
Big one, I think.
And so I'm not sure what the answer to that question is, but I think we're going to find out just how, because the frontiers for clubs are going to be pushed as they struggle. So let's just see how values-based clubs really are.
Julie?
I would say yes. I think it all depends on what your values are, and living your values and being authentic is how you can, attract players. It's how you can attract investment. It's how you can attract partners. It's how you can attract your fans. So once you say what you stand for, it actually becomes easier to bring people in.
Ferdinand?
I'll be very quick. La Liga just published a manual called, everybody knows about the financial fair play, social fair play. My view is that within the next 2 or 3 years, where all the clubs are going to be required also to report on this. This is coming. Purpose being part of the club's DNA is going to be mandatory, I think, 10 years, 20 years down the road. Hopefully 10 by 2030. Maybe that's 8.
Brilliant. Well, look, thank you very much. Man from Sporting Gijón, Julie from Angel City, Jacob from Right to Dream and FC Nordsland, and also to our colleagues from Oakland Roots and Werder Bremen. Thank you very much, and thanks a lot for spending the time with us, guys.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you to our panel as well. Really appreciate it. Appreciate your brevity at the end there. Sorry I had to cut you off. I feel really bad, particularly when it's purpose-related, because it's very much my wheelhouse. But thank you very much indeed. Cheers, Ben. Top job as always.